In this example, I'm going to model a classic Gothic arch using intersecting arcs. And to do this, I'm going to use the Create Arc tool, which is the simplest way of creating span arcs with a particular radius. Now, the starting point for my design looks a little bit weird, but it's just the same square, actually, a 5 by 5 inch square, which I've just copied across several times. And the idea here is that this is going to give me the construction points I need for my overlapping arcs. So with those squares already made, so like I said, it's just a simple copy of a single square there. I'm going to go to the Create Arc tool here on the Drawing tab, select that, and it gives me the options here for start and end point and 3 different ways of defining the midpoint of the arc, if you like, well, the extra point to define the arc. And I'm going to use the radius in this case because I've got these squares here, and the radius I'm going to be after is 5. So I start by just finding my snap point on one corner of each of these square shapes, and I can just come across here. So I'm selecting the point dynamically with a 2D view. I could also select that third point dynamically in the 2D view as well to form the arc very easily and intuitively that way. But in this case, I want to fix the exact radius, so I'm going to enter 5 directly in there, and then I'm going to do the same again and essentially repeat this process to give me my basic starting arc shapes, of which I'm going to have 4. So that's the third one, and then the final one here. So I've done the same process in each case. So they're all 5 units, or 5 inches in this case, radius arcs. So that's the basic arc shapes that I'm going to use, and I'm going to make some copies of those. So if I select these by holding down the Shift key, I can group select all the arcs I've just created. And now what I want to do is mirror them round to create the intersecting arcs to form my arch shape. And to do that, I can actually make copies of these arcs and mirror them at the same time. So I'm going to hold down the Shift and the Control key. The Shift key means I'm going to mirror around the center line of my model as opposed to the center line of the object that I'm mirroring. And the Control key means I'll make a copy. And so with both those keys pressed, I can press the H key to mirror horizontally, H for horizontally, and that produces my copies here. So I'm done with the construction geometry, so I'm just going to select that layer and hide that and go back to my original layer. And what I want to do now is just trim away the extraneous bits of the arc that I don't need. So I can use our nice scissors tool here and just roll over the bits I don't want and trim them off. And as you can see, that's produced quite a pleasing intersecting arc shape. And then finally, I've already created the simple boxes at the bottom here, which again are just like the cube pieces that we'd used before, or the square piece we'd used before, but trimmed back. So now I've ended up with the shape that I'm after. And to do the modeling, I'll do something slightly unusual, which is that I'm going to use a form tool to cut this shape into a simulation block, and then I can use the simulation actually as a model. So I've created a simple profile toolpath here using a round over tool. So I'm simply going to run that profile toolpath across my whole job there. I'm going to simulate that toolpath that we've just created, like so. So that produces the intersecting shapes for us. So it's a little bit like an extrusion, really, by using the toolpath in this way. So I can close that down, but first I'm going to take a copy of it. So I'm going to create a component from the toolpath preview, and then close that down and go back to the modeling tab. So I have an exact copy of the simulation here, but for the purposes of my design, I'm going to select that toolpath preview and I'm going to set the subtract mode here. And the subtract mode actually effectively inverts that round so that the object is now standing proud. And then just to take the sharp edges off a little bit, we can smooth that a touch, like so. And then we'll give it a nice stone-like color scheme. So if I use the appearance here from this component's properties, and I'm going to select a material, and then in there we've got various things including some types of stone, so I shall just use a granite or something like that to finish off. And then you can see I've created myself effectively a reusable component now, made up of intersecting arcs and the new Create Arc tool.